In this video, I'm going to show you how to use Desmos to do linear regression. And we're going to look at an example problem from section 4.1 in our textbook. And in this table up here, we have a list of credit scores and then interest rates. The credit scores are what are called FICO scores, and they range from 300 to 850. A higher score tells that the person who the score belongs to has a better credit history. And then in the interest rate column, these are what a bank is offering on a 36-month auto loan. So someone with a credit score of 545 would be offered an interest rate of 18.982 and so forth. So in order to look at linear regression, I want to first figure out which is the explanatory variable and which is the response variable. And so I just ask myself, does it make sense that the credit score would impact the interest rate or that the interest rate would impact the credit score? Well, we know that the credit score, it basically indicates the person's credit history, so it's probably not impacted by the interest rate. It's probably the other way around, which means I would like to make the credit score the explanatory variable and the interest rate the response variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and open up Desmos, and I've got it opened up here. Remember, we want desmos.com/calculator or /graphing in order to get the graph to come up. And then I'm going to enter the data in a table, and I do that by just clicking on this plus sign, selecting table, and now I've got my two columns. And it doesn't really matter which data I put in which column, but normally we use X1, where we use X for the explanatory variable and Y for the response variable. So I'm going to go ahead and edit the credits, enter the credit scores into my X column and the interest rate into my Y column. And I actually did that in another screen here, so I'm going to get rid of that. And then just for a quick second, I want to show you, we like to kind of zoom in and see the data. So when you enter it, you may be zoomed out, you may not see it. And rather than trying to play around with it and figure out how to get it zoomed in, this little plus sign here will do it for you. We'll figure it out. So all you got to do is come and click on this little plus button. And now I have a nice window of my data here. Okay, let's move that. Whoops, moved it too far. Ah, okay, how about there? Okay, so now we can kind of see that data. And to draw the regression line, all I have to do is enter an equation, but I'm not going to use an equal sign. I'm going to use a tilde. So if I forgot and I accidentally typed y1 equals, and I'm just going to use standard mx1 plus b. Okay, so if I enter that, it's not working because it wants to try to take my x values and it wants to know what m and b are. So to tell it that I want to do a regression line, I'm going to change that equal to a tilde. On my keyboard, the tilde is in the top left corner underneath the escape key. But you want to look for this little tilde symbol. And the tilde says, draw that regression line. And it's looking for a table of data. So whatever data is over here, this is going to be my response variable. And whatever data is in this column is going to be my explanatory variable. And then I can use whatever, I think our book used B1 and B0. You can use that if you like. I just use M for slope and B for y-intercept. So there's lots of different formats that people use for these regression lines. You basically just need to know the one that's multiplied by your explanatory variable here is your slope, and the one that's out here as a constant is your y-intercept. And another way of thinking about this, it's not possible to have a credit score of 0 because they range from 3 to 850. But if it were possible to have a credit score of 0, that would correspond to an interest rate of 61%. Woo! And then this is telling me the slope is negative, which is telling me for every point that my credit score goes up, the interest rate goes down by 0.076. The important things that you're looking for here is R. And what does R tell me? R tells me how good of a relationship, a linear relationship there is between the two variables, and whether the relationship is positive or negative. R is negative, which means that as the credit score goes up, the interest rate goes down, which you can see is exactly what's happening with the data. The fact that it's 0.97, very close to -1, tells me that this is a pretty good fit. This line is a pretty good fit for this data. And then remember, R squared tells me of the relationship between these two, that credit score accounts for about 95% of the variation in the loan rate. And that's it for this lesson. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me or your Math 300 instructor. Thanks for watching.